Well, as the world prays for the health and recovery of the Holy Father, important work remains to be done at the Vatican. Today, the Holy See paved the way for several new saints. Among them is a U.S. military chaplain who died in the Korean War. Father Emil Kapaun is one of 5 servants of God who will be proclaimed venerable. The Kansas-born priest served his country in both World War II and Korea. In 1951, he died a prisoner of war. The others who advanced today include servant of God Salvo D'Acquisto, an Italian policeman during the Second World War, and Blessed Bartolo Longo, who is set to be canonized. The lawyer from Naples, Italy, initially hated the church. He later converted and before his death in 1926 established the Shrine of the Holy Rosary at Pompeii. Well, here in the United States, it is the news about Father Kapaun that has struck the biggest chord. Father Kapaun was born in 1916 in Kansas. He was ordained in 1940 and was a chaplain in World War II and again with the U.S. Army in Korea. He was later captured and died as a prisoner of war. Today, the Vatican gave him the designation of Offering of Life, a category introduced by Pope Francis in 2017. The next step on the path to sainthood is beatification, which would happen with a confirmed miracle. And for more, we turn now to Scott Carter, coordinator for the Cause for Sainthood of Father Emil Kapaun. Scott, great to be with you today. A lot to discuss here, including the incredible story of how Father Kapaun's remains were found. But first, remind us again, for those who maybe are not familiar, who he was and why he is on the path to sainthood.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's an exciting day to be here, exciting to share with everybody. Exciting not just here for us in Wichita, but from what I've seen, truly the church in the U.S. and even around the world nowadays. So we had a simple, humble farmer who grew up in Pilsen, Kansas, out on the plains, grew up with a great love for God, great desire to help others, and really a missionary call that, I think God answered, called through the priesthood, the diocesan priesthood, and then into the military. And he really made a name for himself during the Korean War when his men were under attack. He was there about 3 weeks after the war started. And just from the get-go, he recognized that his men needed him to be out there, not just sitting back waiting for them to come to him, but really he needed to get out there on the front lines, go to the foxholes, to pray with them, to bring them hope, joy, humor, a little sense of normalcy, and really our Lord's peace out there with him. And so, yeah, he had his pipe shot out of his mouth at one point during the war. He always had his pipe with him and he received that many close calls, but he knew God wanted him to be out there. And eventually, when he had the chance to escape during a battle when they were overwhelmed, he chose to stay with his men and was captured and continued his service there in the prison camp for about 7 months. Before, unfortunately, he passed away just giving his life for the men. And that's what the Holy Father recognized today, was how he spent himself in service to the men. And I think it's a beautiful witness to his legacy, which, yeah, continues on today.
Yeah, I mean, his is just an absolutely incredible story. And I understand that his remains were discovered 70 years after his death, in part because of a magazine article. What more can you tell us about this, Scott?
Yeah, so most of the prisoners of war who were with him assumed that he was buried in a mass grave there in the prison camp, kind of along the river. And the communists never let anybody, go in to retrieve the remains from the mass graves. Long story short, just incredibly, by God's providence, the men who were burying him the day that he was buried said the guards didn't go with us. And so they were able to actually give him a more dignified burial kind of behind a hut, and they put rocks and stones over his remains. And his remains actually ended up in U.S. custody in 1954, so shortly after the war ended. But they couldn't figure out who he was. There was about 800 men that they couldn't ID at the time. And it wasn't until advancements in DNA that finally in 2021, as you can see, his remains were returned to his family, which then brought them here to the cathedral in Wichita. And I mean, it's basically all of his skeletal remains. So it's such a blessing. I was able to go, this morning over to our cathedral and just stop by the tomb. And while it was quiet, just say a great prayer of thanks and praise to God. And it's so touching to see people be able to come and pray at his tomb. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it really is wonderful and a great blessing. And Scott, really a blessing to be with you today. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.